We are going to talk about a movie.
This is gonna be a disaster.
It was one of the best movies of the year.
It's gonna go so well. Probably one of the last movies I would ever want to see in a theater. What is going on, everybody? Taylor here, and today I'm here to talk about the amazing musical biopic that just came out, Rocketman, starring Taron Egerton and Richard Madden and Jamie Bell and Bryce Dallas Howard and a slew of other incredible cast members. But I would like to start by saying that this is going to be a spoilery review. I know that's a little weird sometimes to say about biopics about real people who exist and movies about real things that happened, but just in case you maybe don't want to watch it, if you want to go in completely blind, I suppose, to the movie, that's fine. Come back and watch this after you check it out, but I would highly recommend that you check out this movie. I have been anticipating this movie since the first little teaser dropped. I have been a huge fan of Elton John for quite a few years now. He was a little bit before my time when he first came onto the scene, but as I've grown up, I've really enjoyed pretty much all of his music, and the thought of having a movie where we would get to appreciate so much of the music he's made and get to see at least a little glimpse of what some parts of his life looked like portrayed on screen is something that I had a hard time not being excited about, especially after Bohemian Rhapsody. I know there are very, very, very divisive, mixed reviews of Bohemian Rhapsody. I personally had so much fun with that movie and really appreciated getting to see Queen's music in that way and just get to see that story. So this was something I was really interested to see what the direction was going to be, since Dexter Fletcher is involved, obviously, with doing part of Bohemian Rhapsody, and then taking on this movie and being able to just completely control what he wanted to do with it and how he wanted to tell the story. And I really enjoyed the fact that this is more of a musical than Bohemian Rhapsody was. I'm probably going to reference back Bohemian Rhapsody quite a bit just because it is the easiest thing to compare it to at the moment. But whereas that is a concert-heavy touring kind of movie, Rocketman is very much a musical in terms of injecting the songs into the story that aren't always necessarily in a concert setting or in a setting where a non-musical movie might put it. I do think the way that the music was interjected into the movie in a more musical style worked because it wasn't as random as sometimes musicals can be. The places where music was put did make sense to the story and didn't feel jarring in a way where it's a sudden breakout in song that just comes out of nowhere. You can pretty much tell when music is going to come into the story and that it's really going to serve a purpose for where it's put, which is really fantastic. I have to say that other than getting to showcase the incredible music and lyrics of Elton John and Bernie Taupin, the highlight of this movie is absolutely Taron Egerton. He takes this role and just knocks it out of the park. You can tell that playing this role meant a lot to him. You can tell that he really does love Elton John and his music, and you can tell that he pours his heart and his soul into doing this. He embodies the character, or the person, I suppose, in such a genuine way, and you can really feel it. You can go on this journey and feel what he's feeling, and even though there were some complaints, I guess, or some concern that when the teaser came out and when people started hearing that Taron Egerton was going to be doing all the singing in the movie, that there was a little bit of concern because he doesn't sound exactly like him. And he doesn't. He doesn't sound exactly like Elton John, but he does a fantastic job of handling these songs, because I can't even imagine what it had to have been like to know that you're going to have to take on these iconic songs and not only do them justice, but put your own spin on them, because you don't want to be doing an imitation, right? You want to give a performance, and you want to tell this story without making it seem like you try to do everything exactly like the person without infusing any of yourself into it, because I just don't think that would do the story the justice that he does in this movie. But it is nice to have someone as talented as he is get to take on these songs and do them so beautifully and have it feel like him, but also feel like an incredible tribute, an incredible nod to, an incredible way to showcase these songs that so many people love and adore, and means so much to so many people. I really also enjoyed the way that the film was told, because it's told essentially in flashbacks. It begins with Elton John being in rehab, and it's him reflecting back on parts of his life that have led him up to this moment. And in these flashbacks, we get to see what parts of his childhood were like. We get to see the really highs and the really lows in this part of his life. And it really feels like it has that elevated sense of what you would think Elton John's life was. There's glamour, and there's drama, and there's, sophistication, and there's these really, frankly, difficult moments to watch him go through. And you're watching them happen. You're watching him essentially, killing himself with drugs and with alcohol, and not taking care of himself, and struggling with what it's like to be famous. And I think it's important that they put that in the story, because as fun as it may have been to see Elton John's life play out, just watching all the high moments and all the highlights of his career, because there have been a lot of them, and you could do a story about that, but giving this story the depth that it did by showing us those low moments and those struggles and those really unattractive parts of his life, it really gives you a sense of who he actually was and what his life was actually like. And I also really appreciated that we get to see what his first real heartbreak looks like. We get to see him feeling like he's found someone that really genuinely cares about him, and see him deal with realizing that that's not what he thought it was. And it's really refreshing to feel like we're not just seeing the sugar-coated parts of what his life looks like during that time. I really enjoyed the costuming in this movie. They really, really nailed what Elton John's fashion sense was, and some interpretations of the outfits that he wore at certain concerts and certain phases of his life. I thought Taron Egerton did a great job wearing them, and I know that might sound a little bit weird, but I think he wears them well because he wears them well. But he wears them well because he is able to embody the spirit of Elton John. He's able to give that body language and that swagger, and really just makes you feel like this is a version of him that we're seeing, which is incredible, because there's some pretty fantastical and out there outfits that are in this movie. And the fact that you just feel like it belongs there, and you feel like you're actually watching Elton John embracing this side of himself and just being as out there as he was. It's awesome. It's so awesome. There's so many of those outfits that I was like, I love them. I love this so much. And I think another thing this movie really does well, other than not only the wardrobe in those really extreme moments, but the wardrobe in general, you really get a sense of what time period this was by the looks of the fashion and the color palettes and the sets and everything like that, which is fantastic because that's so important to me, at least in terms of being able to really connect with a story that happens in a real historical time in our past. And I thought that was handled really, really well. And something else that I thought was handled fantastically in this movie was the cinematography, the lighting, the framing of the shots. It was easy to feel like I was transported into these moments, and it was easy to believe that these were memories that Elton was looking back on from his life, because there are dramatized moments that are sensationalized, like the scene that we see in the first teaser where Elton's playing the piano and then everyone starts floating. You can tell that that's a moment he's looking back on, and that's how he felt in that moment. That's the way that he remembers that moment, which is incredible. I think it's so brilliant that they did things like that. And there are other moments like that in this movie too that I won't really go too much into, just because I feel like I have so much to talk about in this movie and I don't want this review to be like 3 hours long. But as I was saying earlier, the rest of the cast in this movie is outstanding as well. Bryce Dallas Howard does a sensational job playing Elton's mom. She is pretty despicable throughout a lot of this movie, but she plays the role really well. And it's heartbreaking to see what Elton's relationship with his mom was like early in his life, and even a little bit into the later years. And in interviews now, he seems to have mended that relationship at least a little bit, which is great. But we really get to see the impact that not having close relationships and not really feeling accepted by either of his parents, what kind of impact that has on his life. And she really, really handles the role well. You really believe that she is unhappy, and she's kind of taking it out in Elton in little ways, and that she's just not handling the situation well at all, and Elton is ultimately the one who suffers, I think, the most from that. Jamie Bell does an extraordinary job being Bernie Taupin. He, I think, is going to have one of the most underrated performances in this movie, because what he is able to do in terms of his chemistry on screen with Taron Egerton is one of my favorite parts of this movie. There are so many moments between the two of them that are so special and should be very emotional, and they are, because you can just feel it. You can feel that he really put himself into this role. And there's one scene in particular that I keep thinking about that just keeps getting to me, but there's a moment when he's two moments actually. There are two moments where he's watching Elton John, or Taron, however you want to say it, playing the piano and singing and recording and writing music. And the look on his face and the way that he's reacting to watching these songs, these moments of these songs coming to life and being created, and the emotion you can tell that he feels from these moments is just spectacular, and it really blew me away. Legitimately, it did, and I really hope that Jamie Bell gets the recognition that he deserves for the work that he does in this movie, because I think that he's right there, right behind Taron Egerton with what he puts into this movie and what we as an audience are able to get out of their relationship because of it. Richard Madden was also really great in this movie. It was interesting to see him in a role like this that I haven't seen him in before. I've only really ever seen him in a few things. The Bodyguard, I've watched a couple of episodes of, and obviously Game of Thrones. But in a couple others, out of all those things, I haven't really seen him play kind of a more sinister role like this, and I thought that he handles it really well. He has the thing going for him where he is very attractive, and he has the voice of 1,000 angels that I'm pretty sure everyone universally agrees is just the best. So he has that, and you have that as a part of the character just because that's part of who he is, and you're able to show that as this is someone that Elton is attracted to, obviously physically, and there is some sort of emotional attraction there, but you have that, and then you have the layer of him being charming, and then you kind of get to see that gradually peeled back and see the very much in it for himself side of this character. And I very much enjoyed the little bit of singing that we get to hear Richard Madden do in this movie, even though he himself is not super stoked on that because he says he's very much not a singer, but I thought he handled it very well, and it's a really charming, fun part of the movie. But I feel like I can just talk about this movie for hours and hours because I definitely want to go see it again. I've only seen it once at this point, and I absolutely want to go see it again because I just feel like they nailed so many of the extremely, extremely important things that you have to for a movie like this to work. The cast does a fantastic job and really, really makes you believe and buy into the emotional beats of the movie. And you really get to have a genuine connection with these characters and with this story. I think that the music is handled really well with how it's used in the movie, and you have someone who's very talented that is singing them, which is also a big plus. So they sound really great. You can feel the emotion in them, and it really only adds to how fantastic the movie is. I loved the structure of the movie, like I said, of all of this basically being told as a memory, as Elton is talking about it in rehab. And there were a couple of moments that maybe the pacing wasn't great, but it didn't take away from my experience. I thought the movie was really well written and presented, and I didn't really have many complaints about this movie. And I'm sure there are things about it that, when you look at it from a critical perspective, that probably could have been improved, but I don't really want to talk about those things, and maybe that's not responsible of me as someone who talks about movies and who reviews them. But to me, this is more of a channel where I can talk about the movies that I'm really invested in and that I really enjoy. And sometimes I do talk about movies that disappointed me a little bit, but I don't like to sit here and talk about the negatives of movies unless I really, really feel compelled to. If there's something that really bothered me in a film and really took me out of the film and I just couldn't jive with or couldn't understand why it happened, those are times that I will, because I feel like I should and I feel like I want to. But with this movie, if you're a fan of music and you're a fan of spectacle and you're a fan of, of just feeling like there's a lot of heart and soul in the movie and you want to have a great time, I feel like you should absolutely go see it, because I'm honestly going to be really, really sad if Taron Egerton doesn't at least get an Oscar nomination for this role, because he completely deserves it. And I really want one for Jamie Bell for Bernie as well, but I don't know. I have a bad feeling that that's not going to happen. But it definitely should, because those two really carry this movie in a way for me that like, it just made me feel so much. And Elton John's music on its own already makes me feel a lot. It's some of my favorite of all time. So being able to tell a story like this using his music and to make you feel something, I think is really spectacular. So I would absolutely recommend that you go see this movie if you haven't already, because it's something that I think really achieves what it sets out to, and it does it really, really well. And I couldn't have really asked for anything more out of this movie, which is awesome. Which is so awesome, because I've found a lot lately that I can't really say that, but with this movie I definitely can. So what did you guys think of the movie? If you've seen it, if you haven't seen it yet, do you plan on going to see it? Please leave your thoughts in the comments. As always, all my links to my social media are down in the description if you want to find me there. My link to my Patreon account is also down there if you want to support me. That would be awesome. Thank you guys so much for all of your continued support. It seriously means so much to me, especially with weeks like this last week where I haven't been able to record anything. But you guys are always so supportive and so patient, and I cannot thank you enough for that. And with that, I will see you all next time.